The Galactic Empire's official archives, those dry, red-bound tomes locked in the Imperial Palace's deepest vaults, tell a neat, sanitized version of the Clone Wars' end. The Jedi Order, corrupted by treason, attempted to overthrow the Republic. The clone army, loyal to Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, suppressed the rebellion. The war concluded, the Empire rose, peace was restored. But neatness is a lie. History, as the old Coruscanti saying goes, is written by the winners, and the Empire's winners erased the parts that didn't fit their narrative, the clones who refused to fire on Jedi, the Padawans who survived Order 66, not as traitors but as protectors, the ordinary beings who picked up the pieces when the galaxy burned. These are the true stories, the ones the Empire tried to bury. Prepare to have your understanding of Star Wars rewritten, because the Clone Wars didn't end with a proclamation. It ended with survivors, and their destinies are far more shocking, tragic, and hopeful than any official record could dare admit. Let's start with Captain Rex, CT-7567, the clone who fought alongside Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano in every major battle from Geonosis to Umbara. The Empire's history books list him as retired to a clone veterans colony on Kamino in 19 BBY before the Battle of Yavin. That's a lie. Rex didn't retire. He fled. In Star Wars, the Clone Wars animated series, we see him discover the truth about the inhibitor. Chips, those tiny devices in every clone's brain, programmed to trigger Order 66 on Palpatine's command. With Ahsoka's help, he removed his chip just days before the Jedi Purge. When Order 66 hit, he was on Mandalore, fighting alongside Bo-Katan Kryz's forces. Instead of turning on the Jedi who'd long left Mandalore, he helped his fellow clones, those still under the chip's thrall, break free. His personal log, recovered from a derelict freighter on Tatooine in 5 ABY and now housed in the New Republic's archives, paints a brutal picture. I held Fives once when he died trying to tell us about the chips. Now I hold Jesse, my brother, while he screams about Jedi traitors. I tell him it's not his fault. He doesn't hear me. Not yet. Rex spent the next decade as a fugitive. He dyed his hair a faded brown to hide his clone's signature blonde and took odd jobs. Smuggler, mechanic, mercenary, always moving, always helping other clones escape the Empire's grasp. In 2 BBY, he joined the early Rebel Alliance, but he refused to fight clones still under the Empire's control. I won't shoot my brothers, he told Hera Syndulla in Star Wars Rebels. Not even if they're shooting at me. His greatest act of rebellion? In 1 BBY, he led a raid on an Imperial cloning facility on Kamino, destroying hundreds of inhibitor chips before they could be implanted in new clones. The Empire labeled him a terrorist. The rebels called him a hero. But to Rex, he was just doing what Fives, Echo, and 99 would have done, protecting family. His final years? He settled on Selos, a forgotten planet in the Outer Rim, fishing with 2 other clone veterans, Wolf and Gregor. No medals, no fanfare, just peace. The Empire wanted to erase him. Instead, he outlived it. If Rex's story is one of quiet resistance, Ahsoka Tano's is one of reckoning. The Empire's records dismiss her as Ahsoka Tano, former Jedi Padawan, expelled from the Order for treason, whereabouts unknown. Expelled? No. Ahsoka left the Jedi Order in 19 BBY after being wrongfully accused of bombing the Jedi Temple. She was cleared, but the Order's suspicion, their willingness to throw her aside, broke her. When Order 66 hit, she was on Coruscant, hiding in the underworld. Her memoir, The White Sabers, A Life Beyond the Jedi, published posthumously in the New Republic era, describes the moment she felt the Jedi die. I was in a cantina, drinking spotchka to forget. Then it hit, a pain in my chest, like someone had torn out my heart. I knew, all of them, Master Kenobi, Master Windu, even Anakin. I ran to the temple. The clones were shooting. The younglings, I couldn't save them. I tried. Ahsoka didn't run from her grief, she fought with it. She took the name Fulcrum and became a spy for the rebellion, working with Hera and Kanan Jarrus to smuggle Jedi survivors to safety. But her greatest battle came in 4 BBY when she faced Darth Vader on Malachor. The Empire's archives call this a skirmish between Imperial forces and rebel insurgents. What really happened? Ahsoka fought the man who was once her master, Anakin Skywalker, and realized the truth. "I saw him," she wrote. "Beneath the armor, beneath the rage, Anakin, he was still there. I couldn't kill him. I couldn't leave him. So I walked away. And I swore I'd find a way to save him. She never did. Not in the way she hoped, but she did save others. She trained Sabine Wren, helped Ezra Bridger find the world between worlds, and became a symbol for every being who'd lost everything to the Empire. The Jedi Order once rejected her, but in the end, she became what the Jedi had forgotten how to be, human. Then there's Clone 99, the defective clone who never fought in a battle, but whose legacy outlived every general and senator. The Empire's history doesn't mention him at all. 99 was born on Kamino with physical disabilities, short legs, a hunched back, but he had a heart bigger than any clone in the GAR, Grand Army of the Republic. He worked in the Kaminoan barracks, cleaning weapons, mending uniforms, and telling stories to the young clones. When the Separatists attacked Kamino in 21 BBY, 99 grabbed a blaster and fought to protect the cadets. He died saving CT-109, Echo, from a droid ambush. His last words, "Fight for each other. That's what matters." The Empire tried to erase 99's memory, but the clones wouldn't let him go. They started a secret network, 99's Boys, to help each other escape the Inhibitor, Chips, and the Empire. They carved his number into their armor, whispered his name before battles, and taught new generations of clones about the little guy who saved us all. In 3 ABY, during the Battle of Endor, a clone trooper named Finn, yes, that Finn, found a scrap of cloth in his armor, stitched with 99 in faded blue thread. He didn't know what it meant then, but later, when he defected from the First Order, he learned the story. 99 taught us we're not numbers, Finn said in an interview with the New Republic press. We're people. That's why I ran. That's why I fought. 99 never held a rank. He never fired a shot in a major battle. But he changed the galaxy, one clone at a time. The Empire's history books want you to believe the Clone Wars was a story of heroes and villains, winners and losers. But it was never that simple. It was a story of clones who refused to be weapons, of Padawans who refused to be victims, of defective beings who refused to be forgotten. These are the true destinies, the ones the Empire tried to bury. They're shocking because they reveal the Empire's lies. They're tragic because so many died fighting for a galaxy that barely remembered them. But they're hopeful because they prove that even in the darkest times, kindness, courage, and loyalty can outlive any tyrant. So the next time you read about the Clone Wars in an official archive, remember, the books got it wrong. The war didn't end with Palpatine's proclamation. It ended with Rex fishing on Selos, Ahsoka wielding her white sabers, and 99's name carved into the hearts of every clone who dared to be human. These are the stories that matter. These are the stories that make the Star Wars galaxy not just a place of starships and lightsabers, but a place of people, flawed, broken, brave people, fighting to do the right thing. And that's a history no empire can ever erase. The holograms blazed over Coruscant's galactic city at dusk. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's face, sharp and resolute, casting blue light over throngs of cheering beings. The Separatist menace has been defeated, his voice boomed, echoing between skyscrapers. The Clone Wars end today. The Republic stands victorious. Confetti rained from speeder cars. Children waved tiny clone trooper helmets. A group of Twi'leks played a rousing march on their Leku flutes. For the first time in 3 years, the galaxy breathed deep, relieved, joyful. But if anyone had looked closer, they would have seen the cracks in the celebration. Clone troopers in white armor, normally hailed as heroes, standing in rigid lines at street corners, their blasters raised not in triumph, but in readiness. The Jedi Temple, once a beacon of light on the skyline, was already surrounded by their ships. This was no victory parade. It was an occupation. The Republic's triumph was a mask, and the mask was already starting to slip. To understand the tragedy, you must first feel the euphoria. For civilians, the Clone Wars had been an endless nightmare. Separatist droids leveling Naboo's grasslands, blockades starving Ryloth, fear of a droid invasion haunting every home. When Palpatine's announcement hit, it was like a weight lifted. On Corellia, families reopened their shops. On Tatooine, moisture farmers toasted to no more droid raids. On Alderaan, Queen Breha Organa hosted a feast in the palace gardens. Her husband Bail, ever the pragmatist, sitting quietly, his brow furrowed. "I've known Palpatine for years," he later wrote in his private journal, recovered from the ruins of the Alderaan royal palace, and he does not celebrate victory with speeches. He celebrates with plans. Those plans began unfolding within hours. The Republic's infrastructure, built over millennia to serve a democratic system, crumbled fast. The Galactic Senate, once a hub of debate, was summoned to an emergency session at 0000 hours, not to discuss rebuilding, but to vote on Palpatine's Emergency Powers Expansion Act. By dawn, the Senate's authority was gutted. Committees were dissolved, planetary representatives were stripped of their veto rights, and a new Imperial Advisory Council, hand-picked by Palpatine, took control. The HoloNet, once a free flow of news, was censored overnight. Stories about Jedi treason, a lie Palpatine had crafted, dominated every channel, while reports of clone troopers arresting civilians were scrubbed. On Coruscant, the Republic's iconic roundel blue and gold, a symbol of unity, was replaced with the Empire's red cog on government buildings. By noon, the word Republic was rarely spoken. It was the Empire now. The military's transformation was even more chilling. The Grand Army of the Republic, once loyal to the Senate and Jedi, was rebranded as the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps. Though the clones still wore their white armor, their shoulder pauldrons now emblazoned with the Empire's symbol. Inhibitor chips, once a safety measure against rogue clones, remained active, ensuring unwavering obedience to Palpatine. Clone Captain Vaughn, whose log was found on a derelict Imperial transport in 5 BBY, described the shift. "We were told the Jedi were traitors. We were told to secure the temple. When a young Padawan ran past me, no older than 10, I raised my blaster. My hand moved on its own. I didn't want to shoot, but the chip, it made me." The clones weren't just soldiers anymore. They were enforcers. By sunset, Jedi temples on Coruscant, Naboo, and Felucia were in flames. The Empire called it cleansing. To those watching, it looked like murder. Civilian leadership fared no better. Bail, Organa, Mon Mothma, and a handful of other senators tried to push back, demanding answers about the Jedi, about the Senate's dissolution, about the clone arrests. But their calls were ignored. Organa attempted to reach his old friend, Senator Padme Amidala, only to find her comlink disconnected. Later he learned she died in childbirth, a story that would haunt him for years. Mon Mothma's office was raided by clones, her files on separatist war crimes seized. "They're erasing the past," she told Organa in a secret meeting, huddled in a Coruscant alley. "And anyone who remembers it." Even local leaders weren't safe. The mayor of Mos Eisley, who'd criticized the Empire's new taxes, really extortion, was arrested and replaced with an Imperial loyalist within 48 hours. Trust between citizens and government, between allies, even between family, began to unravel. The shockwaves hit ordinary beings first. On Coruscant, a human named KL, who'd volunteered as a medic during the war-watched clones, dragged his neighbor, a Jedi healer, from her apartment. "She saved my son's life," he shouted. A clone turned, his blaster aimed at Kale's chest. "Step back, citizen. Treason is not to be defended." Kale froze. This wasn't the clone army he'd cheered for. On Naboo, a young girl named Padme, named for the senator, asked her father why the Jedi temple was burning. He didn't have an answer. On Tatooine, a moisture farmer named Klieg Lars heard rumors of Jedi sympathizers being taken, including a friend who'd once sold parts to the Order. He locked his door that night for the first time in years. By the end of the first week, the euphoria was gone. The streets of Coruscant were quiet, the celebrations a distant memory. Clones patrolled every block, HoloNet broadcasts repeated Palpatine's lies, and anyone who asked why risked disappearance. The Republic's victory had been a trap, and the galaxy had walked right into it. But not everyone was silent. Bail Organa began smuggling Jedi survivors off Coruscant in his private yacht. Mon Mothma started compiling evidence of Imperial atrocities, hiding it in a secret vault on Chandrila. Kael, the medic, began treating injured Jedi in his basement. The shadow of the New Order was long, but in its cracks, light still flickered. The Republic was dead, but the fight to bring it back? It had only just begun. Bail Organa stood on the balcony of his Coruscant apartment at midnight, the city's neon glow casting shadows over his face. Below, clone troopers, now calling themselves stormtroopers, patrolled the streets, their boots clicking in perfect, menacing unison. In his hand, he held a small hologram projector, the image of Obi-Wan Kenobi, his beard unkempt, his voice urgent. "The temple is lost, Bail. The younglings, I couldn't save them." Organa closed his eyes. Hours earlier, he'd watched the victory celebrations. Now he was plotting rebellion. The Empire thought he was just another compliant senator, quiet, wealthy, loyal to the New Order. But Organa was already laying the groundwork for what would become the Rebel Alliance. His silent exodus had begun. Organa's operations were a masterclass in subtlety. He used his position as Alderaan's senator and his family's wealth to smuggle Jedi survivors off Coruscant. His cough, the Tantive I Vorth, became a lifeline. He'd disguised Jedi as Alderaanian diplomats or servants, slipped them through Imperial checkpoints, his senatorial ID still carried weight, for now, and dropped them at hidden safe houses on remote planets like Dagobah or Tatooine. "I can't fight the Empire with blasters," he wrote in his journal, "but I can fight with corridors, secret ones where the Empire doesn't look." He also built a network of trusted allies, smugglers willing to carry messages, librarians hiding Jedi texts in Alderaan's archives, even a few clone troopers who'd broken free of their inhibitor chips, Rex among them. By the end of the first month, Organa had saved over 24 Jedi, and the Empire hadn't suspected a thing. His greatest risk came when he helped Yoda escape Coruscant. The Jedi Master, weak from grief, could barely walk, and Imperial troopers boarded the Tantive I Vorth for a routine search. Organa smiled, offered them Alderaanian wine, and joked about senatorial red tape. They left. Later, Yoda clasped his hand. "A leader you are, Bail Organa, not of a planet of hope." If Organa fought with shadows, Mon Mothma fought with words, quiet, precise, dangerous. The Chandrilan senator, known for her calm demeanor and unwavering commitment to democracy, had spent years warning the Senate about Palpatine's growing power. Now, with the Empire in control, she didn't stop, she just got smarter. In public, she voted for Imperial bills. "I can't resist if I'm in a cell," she told a trusted aide, but in private, she compiled evidence of Imperial atrocities, clone troopers executing civilians on Ryloth, the destruction of a separatist relief convoy. It was actually Imperial ships, disguised, the arrest of senators who'd spoken out. She hid the files in a secret compartment in her senatorial office, behind a painting of Chandrila's oceans, and passed copies to allies via encrypted datapads, disguised as beauty products, to avoid suspicion. "Democracy dies when people forget," she said in a whispered meeting with Organa in the Senate's garden, one of the few places without Imperial bugs. "My job is to make sure no one forgets." Her most impactful move came when she convinced 3 other senators from Corellia, Naboo, and Ryloth to join her in drafting a Declaration of Democratic Principles, a document that would later become the foundation of the Rebel Alliance's beliefs. They wrote it in her apartment, by candlelight, so the Empire's censors couldn't detect their hollows. "This isn't treason," Mothma said, signing her name. "This is remembering who we are." But not all Republic leaders were as lucky as Organa or Mothma, the forgotten senators. Those without Alderaan's wealth or Chandrila's influence faced fates far darker. Take Senator Orn, Free Tower of Ryloth. He'd spent the Clone Wars fighting to free his planet from separatist blockades, but when he spoke out against the Empire's new taxes, which drained Ryloth's resources to fund Star Destroyers, he was arrested. The Empire labeled him a separatist sympathizer and executed him in a public square on Coruscant. His last words, "Ryloth will never bow," were scrubbed from holonet reports. Then there was Senator Garm Bel Iblis of Corellia, a firebrand who'd openly criticized Palpatine for years. He fled Coruscant hours after Order 66, hiding in the Corellian underworld. He abandoned his senatorial identity, grew a beard, and worked as a mechanic, secretly organizing local resistance groups to sabotage Imperial convoys. "I'm not a senator anymore," he told a young rebel in 18 BBY. "I'm just a guy who hates tyrants." Some faded into obscurity. Senator Lyra Wessex of Kuat, who'd helped design Republic starfighters during the war quit politics, took a job at Kuat drive yards and used her position to leak starship designs to the growing rebellion. She never told anyone her past. To her co-workers, she was just Lyra, a quiet engineer who kept to herself. Others weren't so careful. Senator Tikis of Mon Calamari, a Quarren who defended his planet's right to self-govern, was betrayed by a colleague and sent to the Imperial prison on Mustafar. He died there. His body never recovered. These leaders, Organa, Mothma, the Forgotten Ones, were the Empire's worst nightmare. They weren't Jedi with lightsabers and the Force. They were ordinary beings, fighting with hope, with secrets, with the belief that the Republic wasn't just a name, it was an idea. The Empire could erase the Senate, rebrand the military, censor the holonet. But it couldn't erase the memory of what the galaxy had been and what it could be again. By the end of the first year of the Empire, Organa and Mothma had met in secret 3 times, their network spanning a dozen planets. The silent exodus wasn't just about escaping, it was about regrouping, about waiting, about knowing that one day the Empire's shadow would fade and the idea of the Republic would rise again. The Empire thought it had won, but the fight had only just begun. The Empire's holonet broadcasts blared the same lie on loop: the Jedi Order is extinct. All traitors have been eliminated. But in the shadows of Coruscant's underworld, in the dusty canyons of Tatooine, in the frozen wastes of Hoth, the truth lingered. The Jedi weren't gone. They were scattered, like embers after a fire, each fighting to stay alive, each redefining what it meant to be a Jedi in a galaxy that wanted them dead. For Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, these remnants were more than survivors, they were beacons. And for 2 figures in particular, Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex, their paths from despair to resistance would become the backbone of the fight against the Empire. Ahsoka Tano had walked away from the Jedi Order months before Order 66, her faith shattered by the Council's willingness to suspect her loyalty. But when the clones turned on the Jedi, she was still on Coruscant, hiding in a forgotten warehouse, her white sabers locked in a box. "I thought leaving the Order would free me," she later wrote in The White Sabers. "But Order 66 taught me freedom isn't running, it's fighting for what's right, even when you have no one to stand with you." She fled Coruscant in a stolen speeder, dyeing her Leku orange to hide her Togruta identity, and spent months drifting through the Outer Rim, working as a mechanic on Nar Shaddaa, a farmhand on Dantooine, anything to stay off the Empire's radar. But she couldn't ignore the suffering. On Ryloth, she watched stormtroopers steal food from Twi'leks. On Felucia, she found the remains of a Jedi Padawan, their lightsaber crushed under a clone boot. It was then she chose a new name, Fulcrum, and reached out to Organa. As a spy for the nascent rebellion, she didn't just smuggle Jedi to safety. She trained them too, teaching them to hide their Force signatures, to fight without lightsabers if needed. Her greatest test came on Malachor, when she faced Darth Vader. For a moment she saw Anakin Skywalker, the master who taught her to fight, the friend who defended her beneath the armor. She didn't kill him. She walked away. "The Jedi would have told me to destroy him," she told Kanan Jarrus later. "But I'm not just a Jedi anymore. I'm Ahsoka, and I choose hope." That choice made her more dangerous than any Jedi Master because she didn't just survive. She evolved. Captain Rex's fight began long before Order 66, when he helped Fives uncover the truth about the inhibitor chips. But when Palpatine's command echoed through his comm, "Execute Order 66, he felt the chip surge, a white-hot pain in his skull, screaming at him to kill Ahsoka. "I fought it," he recalled in his log, "like I was fighting a droid army in my own head." With Ahsoka's help, he'd removed the chip weeks earlier, but the memory of its control haunted him. On Mandalore, he watched his brothers, Jesse, Kix, Hardcase, turn on the Jedi, their eyes empty, their blasters firing. He didn't shoot them. He talked to them, begging them to wake up, until the chip's hold fractured for a few. Those who broke free fled with him, hiding in the outer rim, their armor painted grey to hide the clone insignia. Rex spent years moving between safe houses, helping other clones remove their chips, his hands still shaking when he remembered Jesse's scream, "Traitor!" He refused to fight clones still under the Empire's control. They're not enemies. They're prisoners, he told Hera Syndulla, and instead used his military expertise to train rebel recruits, teaching them the same tactics he'd used to fight separatists. By the time he settled on Selos with Wolfa and Gregor, he'd saved dozens of clones. "I didn't fight the separatists to become a tyrant's weapon," he said. "I fought to protect people, and I'm still fighting." But Ahsoka and Rex were just two of the Jedi's scattered remnants. The Empire's extinct lie crumbled when you looked closer. At the Padawan who became a hermit, the Master who became a smuggler, the Knight who became a martyr. Take Kanan Jarrus, a Padawan, during Order 66. He'd hidden his lightsaber in a cave on Coruscant, changing his name from Caleb Dume to escape the Empire's hunters. He spent years as a smuggler, drinking too much, fighting in cantina brawls, until he met Ezra Bridger, a young, Force-sensitive boy, and remembered what it meant to be a Jedi. "I thought I'd lost everything," he told Ezra in Star Wars Rebels. "But you reminded me the Jedi aren't just lightsabers and temples. We're teachers." Then there was Ela Snow, a Jedi healer who fled to Tatooine, working as a midwife in Mos Eisley, her lightsaber buried under a sand dune. She never fought again. She healed instead, treating Tusken raiders and moisture farmers alike. Her Force abilities used to ease pain, not cause it. "The Empire wants me to be a monster," she told a patient once. "So I'll be kind. That's my rebellion. Not all fates were hopeful." Jedi Master Luminara. Julie was captured on Felucia, her body put on display in an Imperial prison to break other Jedi. Jedi Knight Barriss Offee. Once Ahsoka's friend, vanished, her whereabouts still a mystery, rumors saying she joined the Empire or died hiding. These were the tragic remnants, the ones who couldn't outrun the Empire, the ones who lost faith, the ones who died alone. The Empire wanted the galaxy to believe the Jedi were gone, but the scattered remnants proved otherwise. They weren't just survivors, they were a promise that the Force didn't die with the Temple. That hope didn't die with the Republic. That even when you're alone, even when the galaxy is against you, you can still fight. For Ahsoka, Rex, Kanan, Isla, and the countless others who hid, who fought, who healed, they were more than Jedi. They were the first sparks of the rebellion. And the Empire would soon learn, you can't put out a fire when the embers are everywhere. The Jedi's scattered remnants hid in shadows, but the Empire's reach stretched far beyond Coruscant skyscrapers. It wrapped around every planet in the galaxy, testing loyalties, crushing dissent, and remaking the Republic's former allies into either subjects or enemies. The shift was not sudden, but insidious. One day, planets flew the Republic's blue and gold. The next, they either bowed to the Empire's red cog or faced its wrath. This was the New Order's true power, turning the galaxy's unity into division and hope into fear. Yet even as some worlds embraced tyranny, others sowed the first seeds of resistance. Quiet, uncoordinated, but unbreakable. Planetary allegiances fractured along lines of fear and principle. Coruscant, the Republic's former capital, became the Empire's crown jewel. Its leaders rushed to pledge loyalty, hosting grand parades for stormtroopers and renaming public squares after Palpatine. The planet's wealthy elite saw the Empire as a shield against chaos, even as their poorer neighbors were arrested for sedition after whispering complaints about rising taxes. Alderaan, by contrast, walked a tightrope. Bail Organa publicly praised the Empire's efforts to restore order, but behind closed doors, he used the planet's resources to smuggle Jedi to safety. Alderaan citizens, unaware of their senator's double life, remained largely neutral until Imperial ships began patrolling their oceans, training exercises that felt more like intimidation. Naboo, Padme Amidala's home, tried to stay out of the fray. Its queen issued a statement of conditional support, but Naboo's former handmaidens, still loyal to Padme's memory, secretly hid Jedi refugees in the planet's ancient underwater cities. Not all worlds were so lucky. Ryloth, a planet that had suffered under separatist blockades, dared to resist the Empire's demand for extra resources. Twi'leks took up arms, blocking Imperial convoys with stolen speeder bikes, but the Empire responded with overwhelming force. Clone troopers, now stormtroopers, burned villages and arrested leaders. They called it restoring peace, a Twi'lek survivor later told rebel historians, but it was just theft. They took our food, our fuel, and our freedom. The Imperial military's transformation from the Republic's Grand Army into a tool of oppression was equally stark. The clone troopers, once hailed as heroes, became faceless enforcers. Their white armor retained its color, but the Republic's insignia was scraped off and replaced with the Empire's cog. Inhibitor chips, once a safety measure, became instruments of control. Most clones had no choice but to follow Palpatine's orders, their minds clouded by the chip's influence. A few, like Rex, broke free, but they were outliers. The Empire soon began phasing out clones, replacing them with recruited humans, farmers, laborers, even petty criminals who were trained in weeks, not years. This created tension within the ranks. Clone veterans who had fought for 3 years in the Clone Wars resented the new recruits for their lack of skill. They don't know how to hold a blaster, let alone fight a droid, Clone Captain Vaughn wrote in his log, but the Empire promotes them anyway. We're not soldiers anymore. We're just numbers. The Grand Army's camaraderie built on shared battles, shared losses, faded. In its place came fear. Fear of disobeying orders, fear of being labeled a traitor, fear of the Empire itself. Even before the Rebel Alliance was formally established, isolated pockets of resistance began to emerge. They were not armies, but ordinary beings pushed to the edge. On Corellia, a group of smugglers began hijacking Imperial cargo ships, stealing weapons and food to give to starving communities. They called themselves the Corellian Ghosts, and they operated in the dead of night, their ships painted black to avoid detection. On Tatooine, moisture farmers banded together to refuse Imperial tax collectors, using their blasters to drive off stormtroopers who tried to seize their water. "We don't have Jedi or starships," said Klieg Lass, one of the farmers, "but we have each other. That's enough." On Ryloth, the Twi'leks who survived the Empire's crackdown formed an underground network, hiding in the planet's deserts and launching hit-and-run attacks on Imperial outposts. They used the desert's heat to their advantage, luring stormtroopers into canyons where the temperature reached 120 degrees, leaving the troopers' armor useless. These pockets were small, and they rarely communicated with one another, but they shared a common goal: to take back their worlds. The Empire thought it had control. It had the largest military in the galaxy, the loyalty of key planets, and the fear of the rest. But the shifting sands of power were not in its favor. Every planet that resisted, every clone that questioned his orders, every smuggler that stole from the Empire, they were all cracks in the Empire's armor. The Jedi's remnants were not alone. The galaxy was waking up, one small act of defiance at a time. The Empire's grasp was tight, but it was not unbreakable. And soon, those small pockets of resistance would grow. They would unite. They would become an alliance. And they would challenge the Empire for the fate of the galaxy. The Empire's story was always told as a clean break, a single proclamation that turned the Republic into a tyrannical regime and erased the past. But the truth, woven from the untold fates of survivors and rebels, is that the galaxy Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa inherited was not built in a day. It was shaped by Bail Organa's quiet smuggling runs, by Ahsoka Tano's training of hidden Jedi, by Captain Rex's fight to free his clone brothers, and by countless ordinary beings: Tatooine moisture farmers, Ryloth Twi'leks, Corellian smugglers who refused to bow. These stories are not footnotes to the Skywalker saga. They are its foundation. Without them, Luke would never have found Yoda on Dagobah, Leia would never have become the Rebel Alliance's firebrand leader, and the Empire might have crushed all resistance before it began. Bail Organa's legacy is the clearest thread. His journal, recovered from Alderaan's ruins, reveals how his work to save Jedi directly shaped Leia's life. "I tell her stories of the Jedi," he wrote in 10 BBY, "not as traitors, but as protectors. I want her to know courage is not about power. It's about doing what's right when no one is watching." Those stories took root. When Leia was 19, she volunteered to carry the Death Star plans to the rebellion, a choice that mirrored Bail's own risk-taking decades earlier. Even Luke's journey was touched by these untold efforts. The rebel cell that found Luke on Tatooine, the one that gave him his first blaster and told him about the old Jedi, was led by a former clone trooper, one of Rex's men who had escaped the Empire's grasp. "We owed it to the ones who saved us," the clone later told rebel historians. To Bail, to Rex, to Rex, to the Jedi we couldn't protect. These small, connected acts turned isolated survivors into a movement. The Skywalkers were the face of the rebellion, but the body was built by the forgotten. The clean break narrative also ignores how the Republic's fall was a slow, messy unraveling, not a single event. The Senate did not vanish overnight. It was hollowed out over months. Committees dissolved one by one, planetary representatives silenced with threats, and Palpatine's loyalists installed in key roles. The Grand Army did not become the Imperial Stormtrooper Corps in a week. It was a gradual shift, clone troopers forced to wear the Empire's cog, their inhibitor chips kept active to crush dissent, then replaced with untrained recruits who knew only obedience. These changes left scars. On worlds like Ryloth, where stormtroopers had burned villages, trust in any centralized authority vanished. On Coruscant, citizens who had once celebrated the Republic now avoided eye contact with stormtroopers, their fear passed down to children who grew up not knowing what freedom of speech meant. These long-term consequences shaped the rebellion's struggle. It was not just fighting the Empire, it was fighting to rebuild a sense of unity the Republic's slow collapse had destroyed. Even the Jedi's scattered remnants left a mark on the future. Ahsoka Tano, who refused to call herself a Jedi but still lived by their values, trained Kanan Jarrus, and Kanan, in turn, trained Ezra Bridger. Ezra's ability to connect with the Force in unorthodox ways, to talk to animals and calm droids, came from Ahsoka's teachings. Those teachings later helped the rebellion disable Imperial starships and free enslaved worlds. Rex, too, left a legacy. The rebel soldiers he trained in the Outer Rim, taught to fight with strategy, not just brute force, became the Alliance's most effective troops. They were the ones who held the line at Hoth, who sabotaged the Empire's supply lines at Endor, who fought not because they believed in the Skywalkers, but because they believed in the same thing Rex did, that no one should be a prisoner of their past. These untold stories also invite us to ask, what else have we missed? What of the Jedi Master, who became a healer on Tatooine, using the Force to mend broken bones and ease suffering, never picking up a lightsaber again? What of the clone trooper who deserted the Empire and opened a cantina on Naboo, serving drinks to rebels and listening to their stories, his armor hidden in a basement? What of Mon Mothma's early allies, senators from forgotten worlds like Sullust or Bothawi, who risked their lives to pass her encrypted messages, their names never recorded in rebel histories? The galaxy is full of these gaps, these quiet acts of courage that never made it into holonet documentaries or rebel propaganda. Luke and Leia's fight against the Empire was not just their own. It was the culmination of thousands of smaller fights, by survivors who refused to be erased, by rebels who refused to stay silent, by ordinary beings who refused to accept that the Republic's fall was the end. The legacy of this pivotal era is not just the Empire's defeat. It is the reminder that every choice matters. Every smuggled Jedi, every trained soldier, every farmer who stood up to a stormtrooper, they all help shape the galaxy we know. So let us talk about these stories. Let us speculate about the Jedi who became hermits, about the clones who found peace, about the planets that fought back in ways no history book records. The galaxy's future was shaped by its past. and its past is still full of secrets waiting to be told.